All right, welcome everyone to the Woody Guthrie Native Music in Oklahoma panel. This is Sterlin Harjo, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Dr. Hugh Foley from Rogers State University and author of the Oklahoma Music Guide.
Yes, and so we were, this was going to be a panel in person at the WoodyFest, but as things turned out,
Life turns, and here we are.
Yeah, life had other plans. So we, we're in a pandemic, and this is virtual. But this is going to be really cool, no matter what. I'm I've been really excited about this. There's a lot of people that are going to be joining us that I find really great and interesting, and I'm sure that the streaming audience at home will too.
Hi, I'm Kalyn Faye, and I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm currently living in Cave Springs, Arkansas right now, and I grew up in Okemah, Oklahoma, and I'm really happy to be a part of this. I'm going to play a song called Come Around off my last record called Good Company. Missing this feeling of a long lost lover. Is it pride I feel or an ache that I suffer? I'm just missing things that I can't seem to get over. Tired of writing the same old song. It's another day, so let's move it along. Then why is it hard to admit that I was wrong? Can't get high for getting down. I'll come around. Find my feet on steady ground. I'll come around. I'll come around. And I'm restless in a landlocked state. It's not your fault, I'm just tired of the weight on the things that I can never change. So I've been doing the best that I can. I've been working hard, working with my hands, but I'm in love with an idea and not a man. Can't get high for getting down. I'll come around. Find my feet on steady ground. I'll come around. I'll come around. I've been praying to a man in the sky, but time still keeps passing me by, and I can't help but ask myself why. I'll come around, 'cause I can't get high for getting down. I'll come around. Find my feet on steady ground. I'll come around. Oh, I will
I always enjoy talking about Woody Guthrie just because obviously he's a huge figure from Oklahoma and comes from Okemah. And my understanding is Okemah means town on a hill.
On a hill, yeah.
In Muskogee. And so you kind of start with that, when you're talking about it. And then I've had so much good experience ranging through all the Woody Guthrie material and learning from so many scholars and musicians who, idolize is really the wrong word, but really enjoy his whole ethos and what he was about and where he was from. And I know in my own experience, but me, Sterlin, once you start me talking, I was going to keep going. Yeah. But I think what's important now for me is how Woody Guthrie matches up with this time that we're in regarding race. And that's the giant pink elephant in the room and on the internet. Yeah. Sure, we're all dealing with this pandemic, but we're also dealing with race. And so if you look in Bound for Glory, which we always keep in mind is what Dr. Guy Logston, who's gone now, who was a great Woody Guthrie scholar, used to say is Woody's autobiographical novel. So you read it with, a little bit of knowledge that some of it is some creative writing, right? Yeah. But other parts of it are really important. So he really addresses race in here. And we have to remember he was born in 1912, right? So when the Tulsa Race Massacre happens in 1921 and when the Osage murders are going on at the same time, he's 9 years old. So at that point, he's absorbing this vibe, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is like, that's what a lot of people I don't think recognize is look at the dates on the Osage murders. Look at the dates on the race riot, the race massacre in Tulsa. And it wasn't, and people like to think that these things were, unique. They're not. All over Oklahoma that was happening. If you look at Angie Devo's books, she talks about Holdenville. She talks about where I'm from. I had a great aunt that, a white woman, that grew up in Sosakwa, Oklahoma, and her name was Bella Carter, and we used to call her Bow. And he was, I was like partially raised by this old white lady, like during the day, her and my grandma, and they lived in a funeral home, an old funeral home. But that's another story. But she was from Sosakwa. She was the only notary in town. Like she was the only person that could notarize anything, and she worked at the post office. And she would tell stories about, and this is the same time. This is around. She was born in 1911, 1910. So up into the 20s and 30s is what, she would be talking about. She said that there was a time where these real estate men from Texas or from other states would come into, which was still basically Indian territory at the time. I mean, we're a very young state. And I think that a lot of people recognize that maybe the fragility in the fact that all of these tribes were forcibly removed here, and they thought they could take advantage of it. So she would tell stories about how a real estate guy from another state would come, and he would, he took a Indian man out all night. They'd been partying, and then he brought him here, convinced him to sell his land for like $1. And she was afraid because she was like, we heard they would kill you if you did it. Right. So she had to notarize this, even though she was friends with the Indian man that was there. And she would tell personal stories about that and how awful she felt and how, they were afraid. It was just a lawless kind of time, and she was afraid she was going to lose her life over it, And so this was all going on in Oklahoma at this period.
No doubt.
I did hear, though, someone had told me, and I think Guy at one point confirmed this, but then later said no. But I heard that there was a really poor recording of Woody Guthrie singing a Creek song in the Smithsonian archives. And it wouldn't surprise me because he grew up there. I mean, that, for instance, I'm friends with John Fulbright.
Sure.
And he's from there. He's from Bearden, which is south of there, which is closer to Holdenville. And it's sort of in between Holdenville and Okemah. And, I remember when I was getting to know John, he started talking Creek to me, and like, you know, he could say like, he could kind of repeat to me like the common words, and also like the funny like teases that he got as a white guy, you know, by his native friends or whatever. And so, you know, like we're talking back in the day when Woody was growing up there. Like there's no way that there wasn't an influence there of native and black.
Well, that's what's really interesting about his whole story is, and regarding that recording, I'm not sure what Guy's talking about, but in Woody's own writings, and of course, when we look at Woody Guthrie's career, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about him, we have to think about when he came up, and the words that he used were words of the time.
Yeah.
And so if he says Indian or he says Negro, we have to kind of, you know, roll along with that. But there's a quote where he says, his father, I can hear him now as he sung in his Indian and Negro half chant as he rode down our road and into our barbed wire gate. So there's an example of Woody hearing his own dad singing, you know, something that related to those two things. Then in addition to that, another quote I found that Woody wrote, because the work that you and I did on this maybe the last time talked about the Muskogee Creek hymns and how they're tricultural. And if you read Woody Guthrie's Bound for Glory, there's all kinds of tricultural stuff in there, because when he describes Okemah, he basically describes blacks, whites, and natives.
Yeah.
But there's a really interesting quote, because Henrietta is just, you know, the next town over going east from Okemah. So here's what Woody says. The soft coal mines, the lead and zinc mines around Henrietta were only 17 miles from my hometown, Okemah, and I heard their songs. We drove the 7 miles from Grandma's farm into town to do our trading, and I stood down on the buggy floorboards and heard both Pap's voice and Mama's sing apart and together on hymns, spiritual songs, songs about how to save your lost and homeless soul and self. The color of the songs was the red man, black man, and white folks.
I mean, that's the film we made, right? That's this maybe the last time, you know. I mean, like that is our that's sort of the point of the film, is that you have these three cultures that come together, and that music is Muskogee Creek hymns. And
that's right.
I mean, like there is no doubt in my mind that those songs were in there with him. You know, I mean, like if you talk about like, you know, they are folk songs. They are about, you know, surviving. You know, he's singing, whether he's singing about dust storms or kind of taking it to the man, you know, and making your way. I mean, that's what Woody was doing. You know, he's doing what those hymns do. You know, I love that he recognized then the connection between black and native with the Muskogee Creek hymns specifically. You know, I mean, like, because it's there. You know, and that's what the film that we made is about. You know, but I mean, this is a good point to hear from one of our performers. We have Jula Harjo, who's one of my favorite hymn singers, and I started noticing her on Facebook, and like, you know, she would put out a hymn, and I mean, you know, and it's great to, you know, you have a lot of men, I think, singing these songs, you know, and, you know, and which is a great way to hear them, but also like hearing from such a strong female voice is really great. So let's check this. I think she's singing Hatayatkin, I believe.
Oh yeah, Hatayatkin, good one.
Hatayatkin alejijit mikosapi mongan boy of godlies. Hatayatkin alejijit mikosapi mongan boy of godlies. Ilkin agati hodozais china outlays boy of godlies. Hatayatkin alejijit mikosapi mongan boy of godlies. Hatayatkin alejijit mikosapi mongan boy of godlies. Mikosapati hodozais china outlays boy of godlies. Hatayatkin alejijit Miko shapi mongen boy of godlies. Hatayat gina lejit. Miko shapi mongen boy of godlies. Oh boy dagi chi others china place boy of godlies. Hatayat gina lejit. Miko sapi mongen boy of godlies.
And we're back. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful song.
Nice one.
Well, it's like Had Hayatkin, you know, it's like that song, you know, it's and there's a story behind that, which is, you know, it's like, I'll be in the morning, I'll be praying, and I pray all day is basically what it's saying. And like the story behind it was, you know, and I heard a couple of different people tell me this, and it's like folk songs, and this is oral tradition, you know, like you don't have an index that you can go find and like verify with someone or whatever.
No
it's just a story.
notation.
Yeah. And so like there was a story that one of these old church grounds, Muskogee Creek church grounds, you know, everyone was they were about to break fast, and women were preparing food, and one of the women came outside where there were some men sitting around, and they all shared they all had smoked cigarettes together, and they were having a cigarette, and the woman noticed an elderly man sitting, you know, I'm sure you've seen this in some of those churches. There's a tree, and then there will be a bench around it, like circling it. And there was a man sitting on that bench, an elderly man that they didn't recognize. And she said, "Who is that man?" And the other men looked, and they're like, "I don't know, never saw him." Because you know, they were fasting all night. The sun was coming up, so it was just peaking. It was just getting ready. It was like twilight, you know, it was like the blue. It was kind of a blue sky. The sun was about to peak, and they couldn't figure out who he was. And they were kind of talking about going and asking him. But then right then, the sun sort of crests over the horizon, and the light hits. And they said that that man stood up and put his hands in the air and started singing that song. Singing that song. They didn't know who he was, and they learned that song. They repeat it in his honor because of that. Wow. So it's like, you know, and you think of these songs, and it's like almost all these songs have that. I mean, like there was a song that I grew up, my grandma, my mom, everybody sang it to babies. Like I heard this song growing up. I sang it to my kid and never knew this story until we were making. This may be the last time, and I was talking to people, and it's called Baby Nojas, which is like baby sleep. And you know, I just thought it was a lullaby. That's what I knew it as, you know. But one of I think it was Alvin Deer, I can't remember who it was. This preacher was telling me, like, you know, if you listen to that song, you should go to this website, and it's like AmericanBugler.com.
Right.
And you hear the sort of old Calvary bugle songs that they did, you know. And he said, you know, when they were moving us on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma, they would kind of just bunch us together, and they would have the perimeter. We would be bunched together kind of in the middle of the trail, no blanket. Everybody was just kind of huddled up. And the babies would obviously be scared and crying. And the mothers composed a song to the bugle. They would play this song. They would play this song every night before bedtime, or well, not bedtime, but every time they packed down and stopped on the trail, they would play this song. And they started composing a song to the tune to calm the babies down. And it's basically like, you know, it's baby sleep, it's time to sleep, baby sleep, daddy's hunting, you know, it's time to sleep. Which is like takes that song to another place. It's a story, and it's about survival, it's about pain, it's about loss, it's about all that, you know. And
I have to riff on that great story with another thing I learned from the Kiowas down at the Gourd Clan. If you go to Kiowa Gourd Clan in Carnegie on the 4th of July, there's a bugler there. And so when they're doing the gourd dance and really going, there's a guy, for many years, he was married into the Kiowas, a white guy, and he would wear a cavalry outfit, and he would play this bugle, and he would play either, you know, charge or retreat when things were really going in that gourd dance world. So, but then I learned the story of it, and the story is that the Kiowas captured a bugler in the Plains Indian War days, and the chief Sate Ide, I believe is how we say his name in Kiowa. That's my best white guy shot at it anyway. And Sitting Bear. And then Sitting Bear made the bugler teach him how to play charge and retreat. So then the next time they got out there against the cavalry, when the cavalry would play charge, Sate Ide would play retreat. And then when they would play retreat, he'd play charge. And so it's a great example of military expertise, but also using music. And then ultimately it becomes funny to us, you know, because you can just see the confusion in the cavalry's point of view. And those bugles had a lot of impact, you know, but it made me think of that story when you're talking about the bugle.
You know, one of the things I remember is, tell me if you remember this, but there was a conversation that Woody has, and I believe it might be in Bound for Glory, where it happens. It's a story about music and how it sort of speaks. It crosses the boundaries of race, and I feel like he was on a ship.
I think you might be right about that. He's doing the whole Merchant Marine thing, and
yes,
and I'm not sure exactly which quote you're talking about, but you know, when he's talking about the whole period, he immediately, and I think, opens up and says, you know, there are people of all races on that ship, you know, all bouncing around. Right. The very first line says, I could see men of all colors bouncing along, you know, I mean, but actually here he's talking about the boxcar. So that's not the part I was thinking.
That's right,
So at the very beginning, he talks about that, but then he gets into the Merchant Marine thing. That's where This Machine Kills Fascists comes from, I'm pretty sure, you know, like you put it on a fiddle first, I think, which is in the Woody Guthrie Center. You know, you can see it, and it says This Machine Kills Fascists.
You know, you talk about the influence of sort of more sort of contemporary, I guess more contemporary instruments and things.
Sure.
You know, a lot of the Cherokee and Creeks, we did, you know, use fiddle. And once that came in, I mean, we're from the area where, you know, the sort of fiddle emerged, and a lot of that music. And you talk about like Muskogee Creek fiddle dances, and I'm sure Cherokees have the same. And you know, there is a tradition of Cherokee fiddlers, and another person that we have here is Nokosee Fields, who sort of embodies both of those. I mean, he's Muskogee Creek as well as, you know, Osage, and as well as Cherokee. And I mean, he's a really amazing fiddle player, and sort of cut his own path with it, you know.
No doubt, and been doing some awesome recordings. The band Western Centuries, I think, and Nashville recordings, and as I was saying earlier, I've seen him grow up, you know, and of course I know his mom and dad and his brother, and you know,
I mean, you know,
really talented family.
His whole family very talented and artistic.
So with regard to that, one thing I can say from my own research is after the removal of the Cherokees, they were able to make some claims against the government for items lost during the removal. And a woman made a claim for a fiddle. My fiddle was lost, you know, and so I don't know if she got a new one, but that was her claim was, you know, this, and a fiddle. And so it shows you that they were part of the experience prior to removal. And then when they got here, you know, they wanted one. And so that's a tradition within those tribes, especially from the Southeast, who interacted with the Scots, Irish, and English people.
Yeah, great.
we talk about folk music, it's traditionally learned from the community from which you originate.
Yeah.
And so that's what native music is, or traditional
Totally.
native music is. You only learn it traditionally. But I've heard a lot of people say when they hear native music, even though they don't understand the words, if there are words in the songs, they get the feeling from it,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think that that most likely is what Woody's getting to, because, you know, native music is just absolutely fascinating, whether you're just an observer or listener, or you're a singer, or however you're approaching it. If your ears are open, there's so much to learn from it, because there's all this history that goes along with one song. You and I learned that, or already knew that, and then further talked about it, and this may be the last time.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a Kiowa project right now, 40 cassettes that are family cassettes from the 50s to the 80s, and they're just hundreds of Kiowa songs of every type. And there's this one song, and the English lyrics, if it's translated, say, I want that too. And that's all they repeat over and over and over, because that comes from that time when Kiowas, being as bold as they were, when they would, you know, meet somebody, they would, I want that, you know,
Yeah.
and that's all it says. Oh, I want that too. I want that in Kiowa, of course. But, you know, when we talk about all this traditional folk music, with regard to Woody, you know, we know that he learned some songs from his mom, and picked up the sounds of the area, the harmonica and that sort of thing. But folk music by its nature is unlettered. You don't go to the academy to learn folk music. And so when you get, it's what we call a strophic pattern, which is like the same thing over and over and over and over. So when you do Woody Guthrie songs, GCD, over and over and over and over, your verse goes to that, your chorus goes to that. And then you're talking about something that relates to everybody's life. And it could, in a sense, be just fun, or romance, or failed romance, or work, or protest, or play songs, or whatever. And so these songs tend to transcend a person's geographic origin, because everybody has fun, everybody has some kind of romance, everybody has some kind of work, everybody feels like something is not working how it should be, so I'm going to voice it through this particular way. And then native music does a lot of those things. But we have to remember about native music, traditional native music. If I can just say this real fast, there's your traditional native music, and then there's what we call syncretic music, which is where non-native influences come in. And that's the Muskogee Creek hymn thing. It's syncretic. It's a merging of cultures and styles. Then we get to that whole Pan-Indian idea. And the Pan-Indian idea is music that's happening outside of its original context and may or may not have words. And we have
like intertribal sort of.
Kind of intertribal thing, like Johnny Akeketa, who does the round dance songs. He's got one of those as a straight song, no words, just vocables. And so those vocables carry meaning, because that melody might have descended from some family source, or he may have made it up. But when all the Plains people were put on the reservations, they couldn't always speak each other's languages. So the easy way for them all to sing together was to create what the powwow MCs joke about, which is the Hey Ya songs. Oh, sing Hey Ya number 42. And so just because a song doesn't have words doesn't mean that it doesn't have meaning. And then we hit the contemporary world. And that's what Samantha Crain is talking about when we get to her, is she's discussing young people today grappling with Native identity, and do I actually have the credibility to put Choctaw words in my song?
Yeah.
You know, or do
well,
I
think
not?
what's happening, and it's something that I face, which is, you know, our Native elders and people from, you know, before, they had to protect what was ours, you know, like
Right.
there was a big mistrust with sharing. I mean, one of the first things that I was told that I remember was by my great uncle. And he said, you know, he knew I was doing this. I'm saying, like, for not first thing in life, but one of the first things I was told when he knew I was doing films was, he told me to protect myself and to protect myself because people are jealous. And he said that, you know, and also I remember him saying, like, don't tell some of these stories because they could be in the wrong hands or you know, used negatively. And you think about, like, our ceremonies being outlawed, you know, like, it was criminal, right? And, like, if you shared that stuff, you could be persecuted or
Sure.
you know, who knows what could happen to you. And so there's a lot of that, which is good, which is, like, it's helped survive as well. It's helped, like, when you look at, like, you know, our stomp dances today, I mean, they're thriving, and there's such a community, you know, at our ceremonial grounds, and, you know, young people as well, and, like, they're growing up in that, and they'll have that experience, and a lot of that's because it was held so secret and private and not shared, you know, it wasn't exploited.
Right.
So we always kind of, I think, as artists and people that are in popular entertainment, music, movies, I think we always struggle with that line, you know, we're always kind of moving the line or retracting the line or whatever. And I think that's something that we all kind of face today is deciding
what to reveal.
What's okay. Yeah. And you know, you talk to one person, they'll say it's okay.
Right.
Talk to another person, they'll say, no, don't do that. You know, so, you know, you kind of have to, like, decide yourself.
On the folk music front, I did some work with some, well, depending on how much you know about Indian country, there's the Apache tribe of Oklahoma is their known name, but they're also known as the Kiowa Apache, and sometimes the Prairie Apache, Plains Apache, Eastern Apache. Their own tribal names are ancient, you know, Na-Isha, the Whetstone people, and this was their sign language for the Whetstone. Anyway, I was working with Alonzo Chalapa, who's Apache Tribe Oklahoma elder and traditionalist and cultural specialist and so forth. And what he was telling me is that in that period after the Plains Indian Wars, when the reservation era kicked in, and just what you were saying, the tribal ceremonies were outlawed, you know, that you couldn't do it. So there were traditionalists who went as far as they could go within the confines of the reservation at night, and they would sit around and they would practice these songs so they could keep them going. That's the ultimate, not just folk music example, but the ultimate, I'm preserving who I am, I don't care what you say. And we have to do it at night as far away from everybody as we can, but we're going to do it. And then I worked with another elder, Kiowa elder, Evans Ray Saperhoodle. And what he told me was that his grandfather would teach him songs when he was really young, but say, now don't, you know, share these with everybody. They're only meant for here or this purpose, because that's a primary thing about American Indian music is it's purposeful music. It has a reason, like everything, every song has a reason to exist, as opposed to the non-native world where, you know, sometimes we just have music that's entertaining. That's the purpose, if you will, is just for it to be fun. And so that's why I think the American Indian music is just so wonderful and fascinating and interesting, because it has kept going through all these really difficult circumstances in history, but really show the resilience and power of the people, but also how important music is because it maintains ideals and stories. And I mean, there's a lot of stories that I've learned that have been told to me that made the music more rich for me because I now understand the broader context of it. And with American Indian music, that's what, like that song, the song, I Want That Too, the Kiowa song. If you don't know the story and all you do is translate this from some Kiowa dictionary and it says, I want that too, you don't get it, you know? and real quickly on this one, the Ponkas, what I learned from the Ponkas and another elder there, Lewis Hedman, who said that, there was a song that they had called, well, not called, but the line was, my elder brother took me to see them kill the buffalo. Okay, that's the line. And then that line repeats over and over and over. Well, so what, basically. Yeah. But then he told me the story behind it. And the story behind it is a real fast song. And this young person went out with the uncle to the buffalo hunt. And the way they used to do it pre-horse was they'd run them off a cliff. And they'd all fall. And then some would die, but some wouldn't. They'd just be mad. They might have a broken leg or whatever. And so what the Ponkas would do is one would get some buckskin and kind of twirl it around and act sort of crazy in front of a injured buffalo. And then another Ponka hunter would sneak around behind and jump on the back of him and stab him. So what that then translates into in the modern era is the fast, fancy war dance song that is my elder brother, I think it's elder brother, my uncle, something like that, took me to see them kill the buffalo. And what you have now is those fancy dancers twirling around those whipsticks, with the chain and the feathers, and they're twirling around and everything. Well, if you know that song, that's a 500-plus-year-old tradition that's manifested in a pan-Indian intertribal environment. But if you go to the Ponca world, you hear that Ponca song, you're hearing essentially a folk song that just, if you know the story, describes how they killed buffalo in the pre-horse days. And so that makes it just incredibly interesting.
So, with that said, we're talking about traditional music. How about you introduce someone that, is obviously closest to you on this panel? And,
Nokosee? All right. I'm proud and honored to be able to have my son as part of this. And he's quite a character. He's grown up around me and music and everything, and started playing early on, and then also started singing. Well, of course, he started in the church, the Muskogee Creek Church. So he grew up around those songs, and then blues, and then went into his rock period and the ceremonial grounds. He's a powwow singer. He's been head singer a couple different times, and he's young. He's 25, and so in his late teens, he started to drop his early childhood moniker, which was Blue Fire Foley, which was his childhood blues name. And he played around and he was good, he can sing. And so what's really developed over the last few years is his persona of K-OSS. And that merges his rock and punk rock sensibility along with his progressive sensibility in the native music world. And so he does, a lot of hand drum songs, and we could talk about them as round dance or whatever. But what's unique about this one is here's a young man merging his rock sensibilities with his native sensibilities, because it's a take on a Joy Division song. I mean, that's where the core of the song that we're getting ready to hear comes from. She's Lost Control. And of course, Joy Division being a significant group in the late 70s that develops into New Order after Ian Curtis dies and all that. But that's like rock history. So when you called me and what are we going to do? I was like, well, we might as well throw K-OSS in there because he'll have something for us. And he said, I know just what I'm going to do. And so he did his take on this. And I think he's only posted it one other time way back somewhere in his social media days, and Peter Hook, the bassist from New Order, gave him a so he was pretty psyched about that. So that's what you got here is K-OSS, aka Nokosee Foley. His first name's a Creek word, Nokosee, which means bear, but it's been anglicized by most people, and a lot of us just say Nokosee because it's easier for people to understand in a lot of ways, and you know how that goes. So that's the story with him. I'm proud that he's a part of this and glad to be here with you.
Let's check it out.
stop the tears. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. It's safe to say that she's lost all control. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. It's safe to say that she's lost all control. Hey-yo, 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 hey-yo. It's safe to say that she's lost all control. And cheers.
Kylee Robison is a friend of mine, and she, she's doing a song that is a cover of a "Hooray for the Riff Raff" song, and she plays banjo. And I met her sort of in Tulsa, and then she's the one that gave me the footage from her family of the Muskogee Creek churches from
incredible early footage.
I mean, like 50s, 60s. I can't remember what exact date, but it's incredible footage, and it really makes the film, I think.
Yeah.
And she was nice enough to let me use that. And so if
she made her own video, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. She took this song and made her own video.
Indian women. And I think that's one of the things folk music does is address significant issues. Yeah. And you have to decide as a folk music listener if you want to go there or not. But that's one of the most significant issues in Indian country is missing murdered Indian women. Yep. Tough subject, but she does bring it up, and rightly so. And the folk music forum is certainly the place that you should do that.
Yeah, and this is the place to do it. I mean, and folk fans can either be open to those messages or they can be closed. It's okay either way, but if you pay attention, people are saying something.
said you're gonna shoot me down, put my body in the river. Shoot me down, put my body in the river. Let the whole world sing, sing it like a song. The whole world sings like there's nothing going wrong. He shot her down, he put her body in the river. He covered her up, but I went to get her. And I said, my girl, what happened to you now? I said, my girl, we gotta stop it somehow. Oh, and tell me what's a man with a rifle in his hand gonna do for a world that's so sick and sad? Tell me what's a man with a rifle in his hand gonna do for a world that's just gone so mad? He's gonna shoot me down, put my body in the river, cover me up with leaves of September like an old sad song. You've heard it all before. Well, Delia's gone, but I'm settling the score. Oh, and tell me what's a man with a rifle in his hand gonna do for a world that's just dying slow? Tell me what's a man with a rifle in his hand gonna do for his daughter when it's her turn to go?
All right, and we also have one of my favorite people, Samantha Crain. My career sort of has been with her the whole way, and I approached her. I saw her at a show in Tulsa at the Sound Pony, and I just went up to her and I said, "Hey, I'd love to make a music video for you."
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Cool." And so we did this sort of intro. She just signed with Ramsar Records, or maybe it was her management company. I don't remember, but I don't think she was with Ramsar yet. But we did sort of an intro video of this is Samantha Crain, and it's really cool if you look at it. I mean, it's like the early days of me and a camera, and it's sweet, and it's her sort of talking about growing up in Shawnee, and I shot the whole thing in Shawnee.
Yeah,
Because Shawnee,
going down
where
the
she grew up
road.
is, yeah. And there's
Yeah.
cornfields and stuff. And,
Mhm.
she was, Shawnee was like where we went to the mall and we got our hair cut and stole
Right.
CDs from the music store,
Big
And
town.
so, so that was a big town for me. And so I wanted to kind of make a video about someone that was from my hometown, but I continued to make music videos for her throughout the years, and, we're friends and we talk a lot. And right now she's trying to help me find a dog adoption, but she she's just her through her voice and her lyrics, her soul, I feel like, lays bare, and she's also one of the most interesting songwriters out there, just as far as structure, how it's not, she's a folk singer, but she's not like, it's
Right.
not like the cookie cutter structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. She really can experiment and get out there. I love her music.
I can riff on that just for a second. And my introduction really to her was the first album. Because of my work at Cush, one thing I didn't say is I'm the program director of K-OSS Radio in Cushing. And we're a progressive Americana, local music focused station. And so I've been doing that for 22 years now. And that was after I was the program director at the Spy, the first Spy, not the KOSU Spy, although nothing against those guys, but that's that period. And so as a result of that, I get all this music coming to me, and it's anything Oklahoma, I have to say, well, oh, it's an Oklahoma artist, I got to know about it. And so when I started
Then you have to
up,
come out with a new edition of your book.
working on it. Yeah, working on it right now.
Nice.
So I saw, and then when you hear her voice, it's captivating. And then her lyrics are very worldly. And so early on, we did an interview from Kush, and I got kind of know her professionally, and then I just kept following her and playing the music. And then the nice story between you and me is that when I first saw Barking Water, and we were showing that, I said, man, I just love that you put Samantha Crain in there, and those Creek hymns too. That's also really powerful. And then that's when you said something like, well, what do you know about Creek hymns? And then we started talking right there on the steps of the auditorium at Rogers State University, and that's really where this maybe the last time was born. So at the end, Samantha Crain's, I always wanted to play her song at the end of that film. And I don't know, it opened this door for us. She has a lot of music in the film, and it opened a door for us to be able to travel together. Because people would show the film, and then all of a sudden they'd want Samantha there to play music. And so that happened a lot, and that was really interesting. And, it's been a cool, I think, ride for all of us, all of us Okies, to sort of travel together and watch our careers do what they do, and I'm very proud of her. I always anticipate her new album. We just got her new single. I just added it the past week. So she's someone that we just keep up with because she's good. Not just because she's from Oklahoma, but because she's good.
Hi, my name's Samantha Crain. I'm going to play a song called When We Remain, which is a song that I've written in the Choctaw language, the language of my ancestors. And writing in Choctaw is something that's become really important to me the past couple years. I think something that I struggled with a lot in my 20s, and something that I know that Gen Z, Indigenous kids, and even people up to my age and older than me struggle with, is sort of this idea of not being Indian enough, not feeling like they have permission to know traditional crafts or languages or songs, just because of the general lack of passing that down in their family, or embarrassment, or broken families. I think this is something that's really apparent in Oklahoma, where a lot of the tribes that are here are really far away from where they originated, due to the Trail of Tears. So a lot of the traditional things have been forgotten, left behind, and unless you're part of a really tight family group, those things aren't getting passed down to a lot of kids. And so this idea of being able to create your own traditions, gaining that self-confidence to say, if I write a song, if I'm Choctaw, it's a Choctaw song, even if it doesn't sound traditional. Or if I make a painting and I'm Kiowa, then it's a Kiowa painting, even if it doesn't have traditional elements. I just think it's really important, because it gets past that idea of not being Indian enough, and just saying in order for our Indigenous communities to survive, keeping the language alive is really important, and also moving forward into the future, respecting the traditions of our ancestors when we can, when we know those, but also being able to create our own traditions and saying, this is not a dying tribe or a dying people. It's a living, breathing organism. So that's the idea behind trying to write contemporary sort of folk songs or pop songs in the Choctaw language, and so this song is a land defender song. Just a minute, my dog is making so much noise over here. Give me 1 second. If only I Okla hope happy a chikio. Okla imai mo magma. Napakan mi chaiti mi chanan. Ubi your hope show me to my. Chitokli mi aksi tukon Okla ilvachke Yakni nitana Iva chufa hoshokla Ililaya chonli tu Happy Ethiopia Shotik chi If only I Okla hope happy a chikio.
All right, that is what we have today. It's you know, I wish we were doing this in person at the Woody Guthrie. Actually, it's probably really hot. You know, so I got to tell you, you know, like my college years, I spent at WoodyFest every year. You know, like, I mean, I remember, you know, we'd break into the swimming pool there just to swim. You know, there was a little hole in the fence we'd crawl in, or we'd go to the lake and, you know, fell in love, fell out of love at that place. Sure. You know, I've heard Tom Skinner. I was at camp, you know, the camps with them all playing, and like, you know, Randy Crouch. You know, like the all-nighters. Right. I mean, like, you know, those camps, those campgrounds there were pretty magical, and you felt like you were a part of sort of Woody Guthrie's legacy and what he did to inspire Dylan and Springsteen and the world and Anita Franklin. You know, it's like you were a part of that a little bit, but it was also yours because Woody is ours. You know, he's from Oklahoma, and you know, he left and he became the world's. But like, you know, I hunt right over there by Okima. You know, like I know, you know, we drink the same water. You know, and Wanda Jackson's down the road in Maud. I mean, like, you know, it's like there's just this, for me especially, down in that area is a real, because it's a culturally diverse. It's a melting pot down there. It's a lot of cultures coming together, and that creates, for me, I don't like segregation. I don't like being separate. I like collaboration. I like working with people from other backgrounds, because to me, that's what creates magic, and that creates a beauty where we get to speak to each other as human beings. And it's like that that Indian sign language, you know, when you didn't know each other's language, you had to create a language. Well, music is that, and that area to me is like it embodies that, you know.
Definitely. And you know, from my own perspective, you know, there's two ways for me to wrap this up. One is just my, you know, endless enjoyment, fascination, interest, and connection to native music that's here in Oklahoma is the original music scene of this state and the country. And it is just constantly fascinating and a lifelong endeavor to try and understand just a little bit of it, you know. Yeah. Then on the other side is the Woody thing, who, when I was in the military and across, you know, the ocean in Germany and all that, and 18, 19 years old, just out of Oklahoma, I'd listen to Woody Guthrie records. I bought one that's a French pressing, and it sounded like home. Just his voice, you know, just sounded like home. And reading Bound for Glory, you know, I've had this copy for a long time. Same thing, that he talks about things in there that I could relate to from my childhood. So, and then not only that, but being in Slap Out, you know, not that I'm going to play anything, but how I get my musical inspiration early on was being able to play GCD and do a talking blues, because that's what he did. He couldn't really sing that great, you know, but he would just do the 3 chords and tell his story. And so that was inspirational to me. It's like, hey, I can't sing that great, but I can do that and have fun and entertain my friends and have a little band. So that's inspirational. But even more so than that is the color thing, and that will bring us full circle. And there are a couple quotes that I wanted to just close with here. One's both from Bound from Glory. First one: I never to get wild enough, dancy enough, prancing enough, nor dopey enough to go around and say you ought to hate the race and color next to you there. So that's him saying, no matter what happened to me, I never got to a point where I hated somebody because of their race. Now, second quote: I go to your jail laughing at you, simply because I know to my own soul that if your town was ruled and run by me and my thoughts, tomorrow or the day after that, you would find everybody of each separate beautiful color holding hands and kissing new colors of babies into life on this grass and cement. And I just love that, because what you talked about, coming from this place that's multicultural, him coming from that place and understanding that what Steve Ripley said, we're all in this together. And now coronavirus sees zero color. It's just coming after you. And actually the tragedy of it, because of the disparities in healthcare in our nation, and also some cultural things about how people stick together, people of indigenous, African-American descent, and Hispanic descent are suffering worse than people that are not of those, because they can't necessarily social isolate. They're in big families. Everybody's in one place. Or
they don't have water on their reservation. You know.
And so more than ever, Woody's message of us all being here together and having to learn to understand one another and cope with one another, and certainly not hate each other because of a color thing, is even more important today. So I'm glad I could share that.
Yeah, no, excellent. And you're right. I mean, we're all in this together, and you know, we're flying through the universe together, and we have to find ways to get along. And you know, I think I think music itself is so far ahead of us as human beings, because it is truly a collaborative art, and it is truly something that borrows from all cultures to sort of sing us through this lifetime, you know, and it's a beautiful thing because it keeps going.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Good talk. We could go on for a long time.
I know.
But we'll cut it off sometime.
We'll do it again. They'll have us back next year because this is so good.
All right.